I'm going to call the March 26th meeting of the West Des Moines City Council to order and invite you all to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, please sign in.
We're going to do a verbal roll call.
Okay,
No voting software tonight.
Ryan,
Votes.
please call the roll.
Present.
McKinney,
Present.
Hudson,
Present, yes.
and we have 3 members present.
Okay, Ryan, have there been any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Your Honor.
Okay, with that, we will move, can I get approval of the agenda as distributed?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The agenda stands approved. Okay, we will move on to item 3, public hearings, item 3A. Before I do that, this is something new. Each year, cities, counties, and schools are required to conduct a public hearing as part of the budget approval process. This year, a notification letter was mailed to inform all property taxpayers of the date, time, and location of the property tax rate hearings for their respective school, county, and city. In prior years, the tax entity would simply just publish the notice of the hearing on its website, print in the newspaper, and post the notice at the meeting location. Today's special meeting is to set the max levy rate for the city of West Des Moines for the FY 24-25 budget. We are, however, reducing the levy rate from $10.90 per thousand to $10.85 per thousand. There will also be a public hearing on April 15th of 2024 on the overall FY 24-25 budget. And with that, we will begin the public hearing on item 3A. This is the time and the place for a public hearing to consider the FY 24-25 proposed property tax rate initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice is published?
March 15th, 2024 in the Des Moines Register.
And have you received any written notice to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience that would like to address the council on item 3A, I would ask that you please come to the podium here, give us your name and address for the record. I'd ask that you keep it to 5 minutes or less and that you keep it civil and respectful. Anybody that is joining us online, please hit *6. People get confused on this. It is *6, not #6 or #6, but *6 to unmute yourself and give us your name and address for the record as well. But I will start out first by anybody in the chamber that would like to address the council. Again, name and address for the record, and we ask that you keep it to 5 minutes or less.
Hello, my name is Janice Robinson. I live at 1345 South 93rd Street in West Des Moines, 50266. My property taxes increased by 27% last year. I feel like that was a lot, considering that I just bought my home in 2018. And I do understand that property taxes need to go up. So then I did the new calculations. Unfortunately, my calculations are off because I didn't realize that the rollback was also changing. But with this new millage rate that's going to go in, my property taxes are going to go up 25.9%. So in 2 years, I'm going to have an effective property tax increase of 53%. And I feel like that is outrageous. And so I just thought I would come in and state that for the record because I just think that's unduly fair.
Well, we appreciate you being here and sharing that with us. We take great pride in working to reduce property taxes. When I took office, the property tax rate that we had here in the city was $12.05 per thousand. When we pass this budget, we're going to be down to $10.85 per thousand. Of course, as you know, by trying to do your own research, it's very complex. You've got the rollback. Last year, your property was taxed at 54% of your property was taxed. This year, 46% of your property is going to be taxed. In addition to that, you've got multiple different taxing authorities as well, and you've got an assessment. The assessor, the county assessor, we have nothing to do with. They have to do the assessment by state law, and a lot of that is looking at comparable properties and what those sold for to yours, and that determines that valuation, which of course after that rollback does get applied, which helps. But you've got not only the city, but you've got the county, the schools, you've got Broadlawns and DMAC and a whole number of other taxing entities as well. But we're doing our part as much as we can to try to reduce that levy rate. We take great pride in doing that. We know how hard you guys work and how important it is to try to keep those property taxes down. So we will continue to do our part, I promise you that. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council? Come on up, MJ. If you could keep it to 5 minutes and civil and respectful, we'd appreciate that.
I generally try.
You do try.
All right, MJ Hoag, 413 2nd Street. So I've been thinking a lot lately about the citizen survey that the city puts out. So the last one was like 2022. According to that, only about 7% of city respondents think that they're getting a raw deal in terms of value for their tax dollars. Former speaker, apparently one of those 7%. What that also means is that only about 7% of people think our taxes are too high. The other 93% of people think our taxes are just fine. About a quarter could be argued to think our taxes may even be a little too low. So tax cuts politically aren't really necessary. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad, right? The ability to issue tax cuts can be a sign of doing things well, but it's also important to consider Goodhart's law, which states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Or in other words, when tax cuts become the goal, you're probably skimping out on something else. So one of the ways we fund, there we go. We're funding growth in city expenses is through growth in the city. But the way we grow isn't to make better use of the existing infrastructure, it's to just grow out. And that growth means new roads, new sewers, new parks, all of these things that we have to build and maintain. Well, doing the same thing, but more of it, doesn't really add a lot of room for efficiencies, just like driving farther doesn't make gas any cheaper. So we're effectively just asking staff to do more and more and more and giving them fewer and fewer resources to do that. And that can work for a while, but only for so long. Unfortunately, there are some warning signs when you're stretching staff a little too thin. Some of them might quit. They go head out for greener pastures, a place they think respects them more. Some might work overtime, and it starts out innocently enough, a working lunch, maybe responding to an email or two at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Before you know it, they're working 80 hours a week and burning out. And some, when asked to do too much in the time allotted, they start cutting corners, sometimes literally. And I'm not trying to pick on staff here, right? Because this is just what happens when leadership values cost-cutting over quality. Staff in that environment does the completely reasonable thing, and they take shortcuts. Sometimes those shortcuts miss the path. The irony here is the plow missed the path because the path takes a weird, takes that weird little swerve, and the path takes that weird little swerve because a former council, trying to be cheap, decided to make the path swerve rather than move utilities. And this is cheapness on top of cheapness, and the combined result is probably an ADA violation because I don't think that quite hit the 4-foot minimum. The more you cheap out, the more details get missed. Details like clearing snow from around pedestrian crossing buttons. Right? Now imagine you're in a wheelchair, you're in a walker, you can't go traipsing through the snow to get to the button, you can't cross the street safely. But of course, it's not just winter. When cheapness causes issues, we don't have sufficient staff to maintain road markings, so we have contractors do some of it. To save money, we let the contractors refresh markings by painting on top of old ones, and sometimes that works out totally fine. Other times, they don't quite get the stencils aligned, and it looks pretty sloppy. This is also why contracts should specify things like tolerance levels. But sometimes they don't even use the same stencil, and you get whatever that is. And so, like, I don't know if this is staff didn't have time to go look and see that the contractor didn't do a very good job, or if they did look at it and said, yeah, this is fine, because, again, leadership is valuing cheapness over quality. We've got the street tree project, which is a great thing. I want more street trees. We should double, triple, quadruple the number of street trees we plant every year, which is hard to do when you're constantly cutting off your revenue sources. But staff doesn't have the capacity to make sure they get watered, so we have contractors do it. But staff doesn't seem to also have the capacity to make sure that the contractors are doing their job. So last year, in the heat of summer, during a drought, the contractor didn't water trees. Some of them got heat stressed. Some of them died. And not a lot of point in planting trees if we're not going to make sure they're getting taken care of. Time and time again, this incessant pathological drive to continually reduce our already low taxes severely curtails staff's ability to maintain a high-quality city that the people want and deserve. Thank you.
MJ, I really appreciate it. We've got 70,000 residents. We've got 70,000 opinions and different interests. But I can assure you this, we take great pride in our work, and staff takes great pride in their work. We try to create efficiencies. Any chance we get, we can never stop trying to create efficiencies, trying to do things better, faster, and more cost-effective. And we've done that in so many different occasions and saved taxpayers money and still provided those services. The services we provide are extremely important to us. We're going to keep doing everything we can to provide the best services possible, services that residents depend on. It's not that we don't make mistakes. Sometimes there are going to be mistakes made, and we will admit to those. But we do pride ourselves in the services we provide, but we also pride ourselves in trying to reduce property taxes whenever it's reasonable to do so, because we do have individuals like Janice here that, she's got a property tax increase coming up, and I don't know if that's due to the increased valuation from the assessor or other taxing entities or us or a whole combination of things, but we try to do our part on that. We've got seniors on fixed incomes. We've got young families trying to make ends meet. And so we're trying to balance everything, but we do want to provide high-quality city services. That's extremely important to us. We don't ever take the cheap way out. And I think if you look at other cities around and compare us to those other cities, I think you'll see that. We provide very high-quality city services, but we will definitely take that into account in the budgets that we pass. So thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate everything.
Mayor, may I
know you
make a
took the
comment?
time. Yeah, please.
So MJ, I always appreciate your thoughtful things you bring to us, and I actually appreciate a lot because you're here a lot, and I would love it if more citizens were engaged as you. I also can empathize with the previous speaker and what you're finding with your taxes going up. We're only a small portion, as the mayor said, of that. We're also a city, the business of the city, and the city is a business. We're also running the city like a business, and the only promise I ever made when I ran was that I would try to be the best steward of taxpayer dollars that I could be. And I will tell you, and you can ask all the staff in the back, we're constantly pushing on them to say, how can we do more? But it also doesn't mean do more for less. It's keeping things at a high quality level. I don't know if you've ever lived in other cities before, but I think we do a pretty good job here. And I don't think we've reached diminishing returns on stuff. So I'm sensitive to both sides of it because I plan on being here the rest of my life, and I don't want it to be, when I'm 80 years old, a dump either. And so I take a lot of pride in the work that staff does. I think your examples are funny and they're true. But also sometimes I think about it as critic is also the easiest job in the planet. And so while I appreciate your things, we have a balance to meet here. And it's a hard balance to make because on the opposite side of the spectrum, we've got another person in the crowd here, and I forgot your name, I'm sorry, but she's looking at it from the other end. And so we are trying to find a way in the middle so that everybody gets happy. But I do think your presentations are always thoughtful, and I'm very happy to have them anytime you want to bring them in. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you, MJ. Appreciate it. Okay, anybody else who'd like to address council on item 3A? Please come up, give us your name and address. 5 minutes, civil and respectful.
Okay, my name is Srijan Kareem. I live in 1225 28th Street. I want to kind of chime along with kind of what MJ had said. I live in West Des Moines because of the quality of services that I get. I think it is the best of the suburb. I mean, I know that running on cutting taxes is probably a very sexy term, But as I said, I prioritize the value I get. And for me, my concern is the future value I'll get from cutting taxes is probably going to get reduced. I don't know, like the amount of taxes I pay, I don't know how I pay for the road that connects to my house. It barely does. So, I mean, of course, there's the economies of scale. But what I would like, or what I'm asking for the city council and the mayor is to look into more sustainable way of, like if you're going to cut taxes, look into ways using existing infrastructure to get more revenue out of it. I think that is a more sustainable way instead of expansion. Expansion costs money. I mean, modern day expansion costs a lot more than what it costs where I live, built in the 1970s. And the cost to maintain these things is going to go up and up and up. It's inflation. It's the nature of the beast. And I think there is a lack of focus, even though there is on the comprehensive plan saying that that the city will look into using existing infrastructure to get more revenue out of it. But I just don't see that happening as much. Maybe things like looking into parking minimum requirements or zoning policy changes and things like that. I just don't see it enough within the city council to see this this tax cut being sustainable in the long run. It is, I'm not saying no to the tax cut, just so you know, but I see that in the future it will only bring us a reduction in the services, the quality of services we get. And that's something I would like to, like the city council and the mayor to look into, because we have fantastic existing infrastructure to get more revenue out of. And I think that in the long term can actually, if you get more money of what exists, it costs less to maintain, you would have more predictable growth of budget rather than building more infrastructure. Again, I'm not saying building more infrastructure is bad, but I think there should be a more heavier priority using the existing infrastructure, creating more denser neighborhoods to, changing minimum parking requirements so that we can have more commercial areas of already the commercial lands that we have to create more revenue. I mean, they pay a lot more than, what a residential person pays. So that's all I have.
Well, we appreciate that, John. Oddly, we looked at our parking requirements not that long ago and reduced those, but we always will, could stand to take a look at those things and different regulations, and we will continually look at that. We've been trying to do a lot of different infill development. If you've been down to Valley Junction lately, we take great pride in the revitalization of Valley Junction, and we're going to keep working on that. And I think we're going to be working on 8th Street and other places as well. So great comments. We appreciate it.
Just a quick follow-up. I think the city should probably develop some sort of KPI on, I don't know, like you guys can decide on how much revenue you get out of per square footage of different kinds of commercial, just so that we can have a target to get how much revenue we can get out of, certain kinds of land use to, so that we can meet our budget goals and keep this West Des Moines, I think is the best Des Moines, best part of Des Moines. So
Thank you.
I want to keep it that way, and I hope it stays that way in the future in a more sustainable way.
I assure you, Councilman McKinney had the exact same thoughts when we were going through the comprehensive plan and challenging us to make sure that what we were proposing and developing that would help us be sustainable in the future. So he did push on that, and we are thinking that way. So thank you for your thoughts. Really appreciate you being here, too. Okay, anybody else who would like to address the council on item 3A? Is there anybody in the chamber before I go online? Okay, is there anybody online that would like to address the council on item 3A? Star 6. Okay. Hearing nobody else that would like to address the council on this item, I will declare the public hearing closed. And there is no action that we need to take on this other than the public comment is done. And we will, the next item on the agenda, we will receive and file, item 4, receive and file the special meeting notice. Are there any other items to come before the council before we adjourn? Councilman McKinney.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just, obviously, we have some folks here, and I don't know if we've got 1 or 10 or 100 folks online. I'm not sure. But obviously, it's a new process, and so thanks for leading us through it, Mayor, and thank you, just everybody, for being here. I think, the property tax system process is not a very clear one across the board because of all the different mechanisms. Janice, you pointed out the fact of this rollback, and Mayor, the numbers you identified were a year ago. You had let's say, $100,000 home. You were taxed on $54,000 of that value. Now you're taxed on roughly $46,000, and that's a state function, right? And the state had a bill last year to even move that around a little bit. And then you've got the different taxing entities from the city, the school, the county, the Broadlawns, DART, DMAC, Ag Extension, so on and so forth. It's not exactly clear. And I'm also sympathetic to the fact that what you raised, Janice, in terms of the valuation increase. It was, I think, a historic valuation increase, which drove the rollback to a historic rollback to offset that. But it's certainly something that I took into consideration as we went through a budget hearing. I want everybody to know that back in February, the city did a full-day budget hearing. We do it every year. So it wasn't part of this unique process that we have today, but it's a part of a standard yearly process where the full council meets, everybody from city staff, directors come to the council and talk about their achievements over the last year, talk about what they want to accomplish in the coming year, talk about the costs that are associated with those things like healthcare costs and, just a lot of different things that have gone up over the course of time. But we also talk, and MJ, to some of the points you've raised about satisfaction levels, because there is a satisfaction survey that goes out. I take a lot of that into consideration as to how we're doing on things like quality of life, how we are doing on city services, and what our response times are for police, fire, and EMS. All sorts of things. I won't get into the details more than I've already have, but we go through a detailed process in February to evaluate that, and that, I think, probably starts in the fall. I know it starts in the fall. I think I see Tim back there, and I think he starts in September, October timeframe, if probably even earlier, to go through a detailed process to ensure that this council is fully aware of how we are spending the taxpayer dollar. And it's a thorough process. It's a detailed process. We, thankfully, because of our finance department, I think for 23 straight years running, we have received the Government Financial Accountability Award because of our budgeting practices and our transparency through our website, the award for the transparency on that. And being the only city in the state for at least in 2023, I don't know that the announcement has come out in 2024, but the only city in the state with an S&P Global rating of a AAA bond rating, which is frankly an objective measure of how a city is doing relative to risk. Are we spending too much? Are we not recovering or receiving enough revenue through taxing? Are we doing prudent things with the taxpayer dollar? I'm mindful of all of it. Last summer and fall, I spoke to thousands of folks, and I'll tell you, I think the number one issue I heard at the doors was property tax. It's a concern. And so as we go through that February meeting, it's a complex thing, but what we can do is try to be the best we can about making sure, Councilman Lodes, to your point, we're being as efficient and as prudent with the spending as we possibly can be. I'd love to do more if we could on the reduction. I'm glad that we are moving in that way. And Tom, I thank you for finding a mechanism for us to continue to reduce the property tax rate here in the city of West Des Moines. I know it's not easy. I know that there are a lot of needs out there, but I'm glad we're able to do this. I'd like to continue doing it. And I'm sympathetic to the causes that everybody's raised, to be honest with you. We're doing the best we can to balance things out. But thank you, everybody, for being here. I wanted to give some perspective on how we arrived at this hearing we're at today, and at least the perspective I have going into it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else before we adjourn? Councilman Hudson.
Oh, just for those who showed up, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Always appreciate hearing those. And as always, we're trying to make as a balanced approach as we possibly can. And I think that's the key. If we can be balanced, then what we see is certainly folks getting relief when they need it, especially in a time when maybe your taxes were $7,000, $7,000, $7,000, $7,000, $7,200, $7,400, and then $9,000 this past year or something like that. And I think that kind of speaks to the 26% raise in property taxes that people have seen. I want to share that last year, the notices went out. So Janice, for example, you would have gotten a notice about the valuation increase last March. I think this council was fairly proactive, and we reduced the rate by a couple of pennies last year, and we're doing that again this year in preparation for this to occur. So again, as everybody has remarked, we're just such a small component of the tax rate. However, we are trying to do our part to provide relief when we can, but also doing so responsibly, because as Councilman McKenney raised, it's incredibly crucial that we maintain our position as the only city in Iowa with AAA bond rating for both S&P and Moody's. And that means that when we build our infrastructure, and you are correct, as we build infrastructure out, it costs money. But by maintaining that rate, we get excellent interest rates, better than anyone else in the state of Iowa. And so by having this balanced approach, it means that we can do more with less, more so than any other city in the state of Iowa. So I'm supportive going forward in this way. I want to thank both Tom, the budget team, and the entire staff for always their diligence in making sure that we are running the best city in the state of Iowa. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, Councilman Lotz, go ahead.
One final word. I want to thank the people who came to speak tonight because I do take your feedback seriously. I will also say that I thank all the folks in the back row because I know how hard you all work. Every year when we do F&A budget planning and whatnot, and Councilman Hudson and I are on that subcommittee together, I always try to figure out how do we be the best stewards of those taxpayer dollars that we can. And every year I ask Director Hemisath in the back when we talk about repairing roads and whatnot, I always say, is it enough? And he'll say, it's never enough, but it'll be sufficient, right? And that is really what we're trying to balance towards. I've been in a lot of other towns, seen the other infrastructure go. I know it's expensive, but I think it starts with Mayor Trimble, and I will put this team up against any other team in the state on how we manage this thing, and I think we do a good job of it, and I won't apologize for it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. Yeah, I would just say the only other thing I would add, everybody up here loves the city and loves the people that we serve. That's why we do it. And we take great pride in what we do here, and we want to be the best city in America in which to live, work, play, raise a family, and one day retire. And what does that involve? That involves aggressive economic development, something we haven't talked about, but smart economic development to grow the tax base. The more we grow the tax base, the more businesses we add, the more homes we add, the more revenue we have to be able to provide those services that you guys both spoke of. But we also look to be more efficient and effective with the dollars that we have. We look to take advantage of technology, and we have a position review team that's in place, and we take a look at whenever somebody quits through attrition, the department where that person left has to justify to this position review team hiring that position back. If we don't think that that's necessary, then we don't hire that person back. So we're constantly looking for efficiencies to save money and to do better, to deliver services better. The quality of life amenities are extremely important. We know how much people love that. But we're trying to do everything we can to strike that balance that's been talked about up here, but to have the best city in America. And we are very, very cognizant of the fact that people work so hard to put food on the table and take care of their families, and that we do have the seniors on fixed incomes that, the more things increase in cost, the more difficult it is for those folks to be able to pay for the things that they need, including pay their property taxes and stay in their homes. And that is very humbling, and we think about that every single day. So I'm proud of the tax cuts that we've done. We look out into the future to make sure that the budgets that we do are sustainable. We look out up to 5 years now to make sure that we're going to be sustainable. And I feel comfortable that we're going to continue to manage that appropriately and provide those services and yet cut taxes at the same time. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It means a lot that you took the time to come here and give us your feedback and input. We do take that seriously. And with that, if there's no other business to come before the council, we are adjourned. Everybody have a great night.